Welcome to Quebec, one of Canada's 10 provinces located in central Canada. Quebec has the largest area of any province at about 1.5 million square kilometers and the second largest population of any province or territory at about 8,100,000 people. Quebec is a primarily French-speaking province and only has French listed as an official language in the provincial constitution. Now that you've got a general overview, let's jump into the demography of Quebec. Here's the current population pyramid of Quebec as well as an animated model. We can see that Quebec has a declining population pyramid and seems to be in stage 4 of the demographic transition model. This is illustrated by two statistics. 1. Quebec's average age is around 42 years old. 2. Quebec's population increased by only 3.3% from 2011 to 2016, while the population of Canada increased by 5%. Being the only province with French as their only official language, over 7,600,000 people speak French in Quebec. This means more than 93% of the population speaks French, while only about 48% of the population speaks English. 90% of the English speakers can also speak French, and most people that speak English are located in urban centers, especially Montreal. In terms of financial demographics, the median total income in 2015 was about $32,000, which is below the national average. This could be why 13.5% of Quebec's population was living with low income in 2019, while the national percentage of low-income residents was 12.1%. Regarding ethnic origin, about 60% of the population have non-Aboriginal North American origins, 38% have European origins, and 4.5% have Aboriginal origins. Quebec has an abysmal percentage of immigrants compared to the national percentage. 13.7% of all Quebec inhabitants are immigrants, whereas roughly 21.5% of all Canadian inhabitants are immigrants. Now we'll transition to the migration patterns, which seem to be on a downward trend. Quebec has recorded net negative interprovincial migration for the last 45 years. The Quebec in-migration rate is 2.1 per 1,000 people, which is under Ontario's 3.5 per 1,000 people, and pales in comparison to Alberta's 20.5 per 1,000 people. Not only that, but from 2018 to 2019, immigration to Quebec dropped by 20%. This is compounded by the ever-increasing number of people leaving Quebec. This downward trend was probably caused by Quebec's questionable inclusivity practices, which we will touch on later, and the stance of Quebec's premier on immigration, who has been accused of lacking sensitivity towards immigrants. Shifting focus away from migration, we come across the historical and interesting settlement patterns. It all started in 1534 when Jacques Cartier made his first voyage and settled Gaspé, Quebec, claiming it for the French. This voyage prompted the founding of New France. Then, well after New France had been established, New France became a British colony with the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Interestingly enough, Britain passed the Quebec Act to stay in good favor with the people of French descent in their colony. Finally, in 1867, the British colony became Canada, which Quebec was a part of. Now that we know the settlement history, how is the population distributed today? Well, Quebec has a clustered settlement pattern where a large portion of the population resides in big urban centers. Of the 8.1 million people in Quebec, 1.78 million live in Montreal and 542,000 live in Quebec City, meaning just under 30% of the total population lives in these two cities alone. Not only that, but more than 80% of the total population lives in the area 300 kilometers long and 100 kilometers wide, spanning between Quebec City and Montreal. These big urban centers in the south of Quebec are in stark contrast to the rural areas up north, like Ivujavik, with a population of only 414 people. This disparity is probably caused because the southern portion of Quebec has access to water via the St. Lawrence River and has warmer weather. Looking at the employment in Quebec, we see that natural resources play a big part. The major industries in Quebec are manufacturing, generation of electric power, mining, forestry, and tourism. Did you know that 25% of all Canadian manufacturing happens in Quebec? And in terms of mining, Quebec is littered with 530 mining sites and is one of the rare producers of niobium, titanium dioxide, cobalt, and platinum in the world. This is, of course, absolutely splendid for the economy. On the forestry side of things, Quebec has 65 pulp and paper establishments. That's about half of the amount of pulp and paper establishments in Canada. All this makes for Quebec to have many different types of urban centers. There are manufacturing urban centers like Gatineau, which work primarily with processing and exporting pulp and paper. Then there are diversified urban centers like Montreal and Quebec City, which deal with things like government, finance, and tourism. Now you've seen how natural resources play a part in employment, but do you know how they affect energy consumption? 99.8% of Quebec's energy generation is renewable, the primary source of energy being hydropower, which accounts for 95.2% of total generation. Wind and biomass are Quebec's next largely generated electricity sources. In fact, Quebec does not have any commercial crude oil production. Furthermore, in 2017, the Quebec government stopped all oil and gas exploration on Anticosti Island. And, as if that wasn't enough, a biomethanization plant capable of producing 2.3 million cubic meters of renewable natural gas energy per year is also being developed in Quebec. It is clear that sustainable energy is one of Quebec's top priorities. Speaking of sustainability, Quebec has numerous other initiatives. Amongst their 2030 Plan for a Green Economy, Quebec has also made many pledges towards sustainability, the most notable of which are to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and to have no sales of new gasoline-powered vehicles after 2035. However, as promising as these pledges sound, are there any specific plans the Quebec government has? Well, yes. The government has stated their intention to invest $1.2 billion to better manage organic waste. The hope is to increase the percentage of organic material being composted by 39%. Additionally, parts of Montreal have just recently shifted garbage collection to every 2 weeks instead of every week. This is because the city found that roughly 85% of the materials found in garbage bags can go elsewhere, and organic waste accounts for 57% of people's garbage. The statistic shows that this change will complement Quebec's $1.2 billion investment into managing organic waste. This initiative also provided a financial bonus as, in 2020, the cost of collecting household waste was estimated at 3.5% of the city's expenses, or about $200 million annually. Reducing the frequency of garbage collection should reduce that price. Although these sustainability initiatives are positively featured in the news, there are other negative stories featured in the news as well. Some of these stories concern the questionable inclusivity practices that are present in Quebec. I will be highlighting two facets of the issue today. The first facet is the underrepresentation of minorities in the police force. Police officers across the province remain overwhelmingly white, while people of color account for a growing percentage of the population. The graph on screen demonstrates the disparity in representation between the percentage of minorities in the population compared to the percentage of minorities in the police force. This is a bad thing because it can lead to a disconnect between law enforcement and the general public. The issue, which was brought up recently after a video captured Quebec City police officers dragging, hitting, and pinning down black youth in the snow. Police representation is one facet of this inclusivity issue. The other facet are religious symbols being disallowed in government jobs. Bill 21 in Quebec restricts the wearing of religious symbols and clothing while working for the government and has been very controversial. The bill's justification is that it retains the religious neutrality of the state, yet many believe this principle is being misinterpreted by Quebec. Some have argued that this law targets minority religions that have visible symbols. Even Justin Trudeau has strongly opposed the bill in public, and multiple Canadian cities, including Calgary, have supported a legal challenge against this bill. This inclusivity dilemma as a whole could stifle diversity and be a reason why immigration numbers have historically been low for Quebec. All in all, Quebec is a province with many layers to it. It is a developed province with all the infrastructure to support its population of 8 million people, especially in its diversified urban centers like Montreal and Quebec City. It has a rich history dating all the way back to the 1500s with Jacques Cartier. It's also a leader in terms of sustainability, with practically all of its energy generation coming from sustainable sources. And hey, it's the only province with French as their primary language. If that sounds pretty cool to you, go ahead and visit Quebec someday.